How do you see the future of Iran? The Basij and the IRGC are there to stay. The protests have no leadership. So, will we see a deal between the US and Iran? Will Khamenei become moderate and do some deal? Or will he be deposed and the regime will adapt, like what happened in Venezuela? Can they try and use Azeris, Kurds, and Sunnis, or it creates Afghanistan? Or is the US doing a deceptive operation where they might suddenly do something like Venezuela? What future lies ahead for Iran and the Houthis? Houthis, okay, Houthis. Okay, so once again, map. Houthis are the Ansarullah faction in Yemen, and they are allies of Iran. Iran also has allies in Lebanon, Hezbollah, and they used to have an ally in Syria, which no longer exists because now Syria is ruled by Al Qaeda, or sorry, ISIS, whatever, terrorists, Jolani, Al Shara, or whatever his name is. So that's the deal. Now coming back to what's happening, what could happen to Iran. Look, Iran is too large of a nation to be invaded and successfully taken. It's possible for sure, but it will lead to complete chaos. And is it worth spending so much time, energy, effort, money, especially billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars, into an invasion of Iraq? Which, and say, Iran will not go down without a fight. They know, the government of Iran knows that the Americans are after oil. If the Americans try to take Iran, maybe the Iranians will do exactly what Saddam Hussein did when the Americans invaded Iraq, burn the oil wells. That's a possibility. That would be an environmental catastrophe, and it would take a lot of time for the Americans to be able to salvage that and bring that under control. And obviously, Iran has very, very powerful missile capabilities. They could target all the American bases in the region successfully, potentially. They could even target Israel, right? So instead of launching an invasion, another alternative that the Americans have is to launch an insurgency through ISIS terrorists and Al Qaeda terrorists and all that. And if you look at the population of Iran, maybe roughly 50%, 60% perhaps could be Persians. The rest are various other ethnic groups like the Azeris, Azerbaijanis, Arabs, Kurdish people also, but those are more Iranian than Arab or whatever. So you have various, you have the Balochis also, right? In the southeast of Iran. So the Americans could try and launch insurgencies in Iran. They could use Pakistan. Pakistan is a tried and tested terrorist nation. Pakistan is the greatest terrorist nation of the world, the global epicenter of terrorism. I mean, Pakistan is the world's university of terrorism. You don't need to teach them anything. So the Pakistanis could create trouble for Iran. Al Qaeda, ISIS could create trouble from Iran from the west, right? So maybe that could be done. Like you said, the protests have no leadership, possibly no leadership, right? So what could happen? Maybe that happens. I think an invasion of Iran, military invasion, is slightly less likely than launching a destabilizing set of operations on Iran, insurgencies, terrorism, all that. That obviously, I think, could probably be more likely. So what could happen? Will we see a deal between the US and Iran? Well, if that happens, does the Iranian government have any legitimacy anymore? If they agree to a deal which obviously makes Iran a vassal state of the US. If there's a deal between US and Iran, it obviously will involve energy. The Americans will insist that we control the energy. You sell your oil to us only, or to nations that we approve, which means no more China or whatever. Then will Iran agree to that? Will Russia agree to that? Of course, Russia, if Iran agrees, Russia can't do a thing, China can't do a thing. But essentially for Iran, from their perspective and from their own language and their past pronouncements, it means doing a deal with the devil. Because the Iranian government calls the United States Shaitan-e-Bozorg, the great Satan. So will they do a deal with a nation they call the great Satan, a deal with the devil? I doubt it very much. So there is no deal. Khamenei will not become moderate or whatever and do some deal. Very unlikely. Can the Americans do what they did in Venezuela? Maybe pay off a bunch of lower ranking Iranian officials and get rid of the top guy and have a puppet come in place, they may try that. But will it work? I think it's less likely. It's not impossible. That, I think, could be the best solution for the Americans. Um, don't do a military invasion. Launch insurgencies and terrorist operations across Iran using ISIS, using Pakistani terrorists, and so on. And by that, put pressure on the Iranian regime, and then pay off a bunch of Iranian high ranking people, the key people in the government, to expel or take out the top leadership, and then install a puppet of the US. That, I think, is the best option for the US. It will cost them the least, and it will, cost them the least. No trillions of dollars to spend on a military operation. And that by doing that, you can actually take over the entire nation essentially intact. All the assets, all the resources of the nation intact. So that could be the best way forward for the US, right? So what future lies ahead for Iran? More and more pressure on Iran. Maybe the Turks, etc., will launch some kind of ISIS operation, that sort of thing. Maybe the Pakistanis will be involved in terrorist activities in Iran. Maybe Iran comes under more and more pressure, and then the Americans maybe try to buy some Iranians off and effect a regime change at the very top, while keeping the rest of the government structure intact. So it looks like there was a coup within Iran, and the government of Iran has decided to have a new leader now. And miraculously, this new leader now is pro-US. That's also a possibility. I think that is the ideal way forward for the US. Makes the most sense and costs the least. So will that succeed? Depends on to what extent the Pakistani potential terrorists and potential Turkey ISIS terrorists can destabilize Iran, and the extent to which the Americans can, and the Israelis and whoever else can foment more protests and so on in Iran. If that continues, and there is more pressure on the government, and then there is more of an incentive for some people in the Iranian government to accept a US proposal for regime change, which leaves the rest of the structure intact. So I think that could be the angle the Americans will work on. Let's see how it goes.